So we'll start with our motivation. And studying these verses from Aryadeva, especially the last few weeks as we've been reviewing, we've had a chance to really reconnect with how distorted our view of reality is, and how much we do cling to things that are transient, thinking that they're permanent, and how much pain that causes us. And seeing how much through the course of a day, if we notice at all, we're just chasing after happiness. This will make me happy, this will make me happy, this will make me happy. And, very clearly we're grasping at something that is totally in the nature of dukkha and satisfactoriness and can't do that. We've been able to see again how we cling to our own bodies. We're so driven to match up with other people's bodies. And it's something that's really foul completely in nature that we don't even see. And then tonight we'll look at how it all rises really out of grasping at a self that isn't there in the way that we think it is. And so as we look at these, the whole point is to help us recognize that our view is distorted and to develop a sense of really strong wish to be free of these wrong views and to be free of samsara itself. But the next step, we can't stop with that, is to actually look around at the people around us, the people we care about, the people we live with, and then all the people out there that we don't know that we interact with all the time, and recognize that they're doing exactly the same thing. That they're just grasping at things as permanent when they're not. They're just grasping at happiness when it's not going to come from that thing that they're chasing after. They're just grasping at their own bodies or other people's bodies. They're just grasping at a self. And if we've thought about it deeply for our own selves, then only compassion can arise for other people. So I can say that in meditation on the cushion, but as soon as I've stood up and walked out the door, that understanding is like gone. So as we go deeper into this text now and over the next weeks, maybe we can set a really strong motivation to internalize these teachings, not just for our own liberation, which would be great if we could get really clear about that aspiration to be free, but also to develop a compassion so strong for all the living beings around us who are in exactly the same boat, but who don't have the opportunity to take teachings like we do, to study and practice the Buddhist Dharma, that we can set a very strong motivation to develop our capacities fully, completely, to be able to liberate every single living being from this distorted views, from this suffering, and lead all beings to awakening. So let's set that as our aspiration, our motivation, our goal for this in all future lives until we get there. Not such a nice gong, sorry. So we're on chapter 4 of Aryadeva's 400 stanzas on the middle way. Now, I have to say, so this is the chapter where the method to abandon the erroneous concept of self by showing the inappropriateness of considering contaminated things as I and mine. That's the voice of Joshua Cutler I just spoke. Basically, we're looking at pride. And I have to say, I struggled with this chapter when Geshe Topki taught it. I struggled with this chapter when Venerable Chödrön taught it. And then, when we picked weeks, this date worked for me, and when I saw it was chapter 4, I was like, oh no! Yeah. So, I cannot say that I have mastered it in my study, but it's been good to make me really get inside this and go, okay, what is this chapter really about, and what can I get from this? So I hope that it will be helpful for others. I know other people had questions about this chapter as well. So we'll see how we do. So just bear with me. I went to Alex Berzin. I went to a lot of places looking for how to work with this. And so I think I got somewhere, at least in my own practice. It's been very helpful. I hope I can communicate something of what I learned. So to back up, first of all, it's ironic to me that doing this chapter, there's a lovely little story about Gyaltsab, whose commentary we're following here. He was, an amazing child. He was in the monastery early. He learned things quickly. By the age of 25, he had gained a reputation for scholarship and prowess in debate. So he defeated 2 Sakya masters and decided to take on Tsongkhapa. When he arrived at the monastery where Tsongkhapa was teaching, he entered the hall while the discourse was in progress without removing his hat. Very disrespectful. Tsongkhapa noticed him but continued to teach. Then Gyaltsab strode up to the throne on which Tsongkhapa was seated and began to mount it. Totally unruffled by this uncouth behavior, Tsongkhapa simply moved over and made a space for him. So Gyaltsab climbs up on the teaching throne and sits next to him. Then Gyaltsab, as he listened, began to hear many things he had never heard before from any other scholar, and his arrogance began to subside. First he removed his hat, then he got down off the throne and seated himself among the listeners, and then finally he decided not to challenge Tsongkhapa but actually requested to become his student. Says Tsongkhapa saw in him a jewel-like disciple and accepted him. So somehow reading this gave me some hope about my own pride. Not that I have anything like Gyaltsab's qualities to even have pride, but I thought, well, gosh, Tsongkhapa still saw him as a jewel-like disciple. And then later in his life, Gyaltsab became his spiritual heir, his direct heir. And they said, oh, it was really auspicious that he climbed up on Tsongkhapa's throne and sat next to him. That was a sign that they were actually sharing things. So, okay, so that's our reassuring thought about arrogance. The rest of it is not very reassuring. So, we've been looking at, as I said in the motivation, these 4 conceptions or 4 distortions, seeing what is transient and impermanent as fixed and durable, seeing what is by nature dukkha, unsatisfactory as pleasurable, and last week, Venerable Simke's rousing teaching on seeing what is actually foul as pure. So now we're looking at what lacks a self as having a self. So, this thing about pride, what does this have to do with this? So, essentially, having gross pride is like the most obvious manifestation of grasping at something that isn't even really there. It's bad enough that we grasp at the sense of me, I, my, mine, which we, based on this incorrect kind of assumption that we make on looking at our aggregates and going, oh, well, there's an I and a mind here. Not only that, then we go, ooh, and it's cool. Not only is it not there, yeah, it's special. I'm special. I'm me, and I'm special. So it's like refuting that special part is puffed up on top of puff, right? So we're looking at arrogance because it's really the grossest manifestation of this seeing what lacks a self as having a self. And then the more and more and more subtle stuff comes later in the text. So this was helpful. Berzin says, Aryadeva speaks in terms of this, in terms of disturbing emotion that would arise on the basis of this misconception of a self. So the disturbing attitude that would arise is pride. Feeling pride about a me that stands alone and is all by itself, independent. Right? He also gave a little background on addressing the king, because Nagarjuna does this in Letter to a Friend and Precious Garland. His texts are written specifically to king, so it's quite kind of common in this genre. Berzin, he doesn't say this is a fact, but his guess is kings being the patrons of monasteries, perhaps they kind of elicit a special teaching to them. Maybe that's why the king thing was there. And so, especially, kings are super proud, right? So if we have pride, it's based on this idea that I am a king. I am a nun. I am a something. I am somebody. It's based on that. And so if you think you're the king or the whatever, then you're very proud. But then the point of meditation here is but what is a king? What is a king? Is it the king's body? Is it the title? Is it the king's retinue? Where is the king in all of this? What makes a king a king a king? What's a king? But so then to have this, I'm a king, and grasping it, and then taking all this power and doing all these things that are described here, that's the pride that gets in the way. So Venerable talked about using the example of the king, because a king has power and wealth, and that's something that we revere and have always revered in societies since the beginning of time. But she said anybody that has power, fame, wealth, a good reputation can work. And if these assertions don't work for you, rewrite them. So I did a little rewriting. First of all, I think I have to own, and everyone should own, I am the queen of my own life. Regardless of having power, wealth, or anything, I am the queen of my own life. And if my own life is only as big as this puja table, or my own life is as big as my desk or my little room over there, I am the queen of my life. So if I put it in that context, well, and everything makes a lot of sense. The other thing that I really struggled with was this Joe Blow convention. Joe Blow makes these assertions about why it's appropriate to have pride or arrogance. And so it's who's Joe Blow? It's like some sports commentator over here. So this did not work for me either, so I took it out. The assertions are in the text, but they're not assigned to anybody. What are these assertions? The assertions are in my own mind. I'm the one making these assertions, making these excuses. And the word is not appropriate, but okay. Arrogance is okay because. So we're working on that a little bit. Okay, so here's the key verse that sets the whole thing up. Verse 76. Who that is wise about worldly existence would be arrogant, thinking I and mine? For all things belong equally to all embodied beings. So this verse is, who that is wise? The excellent who see the nature of reality, who see the nature of worldly existence, none of them would be arrogant about what's I and mine. For all things belong to everybody. So Gyaltsab says, by considering oneself praiseworthy, arrogant pride arises, thinking I am the owner, which is the conception of the self, and these things are mine. Now, who here does not think at some time that they are praiseworthy? Upon which a little arrogant pride arises. Yeah. I am the owner. This is my mala. I'm the owner of whatever. And so, so this verse, Aryadeva is saying, you can't think of your kingdom as mine, because someone will take it over after you die. And besides, everything here that you claim, everybody else also owns. It's all public property. So it's like getting possessive about something in the monastery. You know, this is my place. Well, you get smacked down kind of quick with that, but it's easy to see, you know, it's easy to see ourselves too. Or we stake out our little space. This is my kitchen. This is my office. This is my building. You know, so the I that rises up, that's where we need to watch out. So I went to Jeffrey Hopkins to look at pride from here. I thought, okay, if this is the foundational verse, let's look at what is pride again. So pride depends on the view of the transitory collection as a real I, and has the aspect of puffing up of the mind, observing one's own wealth, qualities, youth, and so forth. It has the function of serving as a basis for the arising of disrespect and suffering. So, upon viewing our own aggregates, upon seeing our body and mind, and, you know, observing that as a real I, then we puff up when we observe our own stuff, our own good qualities, our own whatever. It makes us disrespectful, and it causes suffering. So there's 7 types of pride, which we won't go into, but because disrespect for high qualities and those who possess high qualities, because pride causes that, it's devastating. It obstructs the new, so we can't learn the Dharma. We have bad rebirths, and even when we're reborn as a human, we're born in a low, like a servant or a slave, or, you know, in some subservient way. We're born without the very highness that we're puffed up about, right? So it has the opposite effect with our rebirths. So it's like really bad in terms of its effect. And it's also really, I think, really hard to see. So in some ways, I've started to appreciate, oh, the king is an example, because it's so obvious in some ways, you know. But it takes a little bit to get ourselves inside, oh, I'm the king. I'm the king. This is my assertion. Okay, so let's go on from there. Oh yeah, so one thing I wanted to say about how this works for us here is no matter what our job is, we can get very possessive about our job and very kind of puffed up about our job. Even our chore of the month. You know, I've seen people get really upset when somebody else does their chore. There's a kind of a, right? Or, you know, or taking over a job. You know, I've had a hard time letting go of a job this year. Well, I don't know a hard time, but I've seen the grasping to it. So here's the assertion for the next verse. Since all worldly enterprises are under the king's control, arrogance is appropriate. Is the way it's written. We're going to say, since all worldly enterprises in my world are under my control, arrogance is okay. So the verse has some background about how kings got to be kings. Here's the verse. Society's servant paid with a 6th part, why are you so arrogant? Your becoming the agent of actions depends on being placed in control. So the background on this, according to Gyaltsab, is that way back, wild rice was sufficient to feed the people. And then there came a point when there were more people than there was wild rice, so they had to start growing it. So some people were really diligent, industrious, and wanted to grow rice, and some people said, I'll let them grow the rice, and then when it's ready to harvest, I'll take it. So then, out of that, little societies banded together and said, oh, well, we need to protect the people who are growing the rice from the people who are stealing the rice. And so they kind of developed societies around that, and they elected or picked a person who would be the guardian or the protector of the rice growers. That was that person's job. So let's say 5 of them are rice growers, the 6th one is the protector. So then it became a custom that 1/6 of the rice went to the protector because he was doing his job. Well, they say, according to this, that's how the kings came to be kings. But everybody forgot that. So sooner or later, the king got elevated to this place of being the protector, kind of the ruler, the runner, where everybody else is still just growing rice. So this verse then is referring to the idea that society's servant, you're paid. Why are you so arrogant? You're just doing your job that we picked you to do. Right? So for us, it's the same thing. Anytime that we're in charge of something, anytime that we're given a responsibility to do something, we're really just serving the people who gave us the job. Nothing more, nothing less. But it's so easy to, like, for example, in my role as inviting generosity or publicity, it's like, I think everything should be under my control. All of those things. There's a certain kind of arrogance that comes up. That's my department. But I'm just doing a job that everybody said, oh, here, do this job. It has nothing to, there's nothing to be proud or arrogant about in that way. Right? Is this making sense? Similarly, this was Venerable Children. If a servant is given a job to do, or is like the assistant to the abbess, for example, delegated by the one in charge, arrogance is also inappropriate. The master depends on you to do the job, but it is not proper to be proud about it, which we can do. She told me. She picked me to. Easy to do. So the Lama Yeshe's mantra, I am the servant of others, I am the servant of others, I am the servant of others, would serve us a lot in terms of battling our own arrogance. Verse 78, the assertion is, arrogance is natural or okay because I, the boss, the supervisor, control the giving and getting of wealth. Arrogance is okay. I control the giving and getting of wealth. Here's Aryadeva's answer. When those in his care receive their due, they think of their master as the giver. When the master gives what is to be given, he thinks with conceit, I am the giver. Anyone here ever been a boss or in charge of the payroll or somehow even hiring somebody to mow your lawn, in a position to be the giver of the wealth? Sometimes we pay the kid who mows the lawn. We don't think about it. Sometimes there's a little bit of, yeah, I can afford you. A little bit of puffed upness. So, this is, this answer here is, this is not appropriate. The worker has earned their wage. You're just giving them their due. We're all equal here. We're all equal here. So you can see, like the CEO who makes a zillion dollars paying the worker who doesn't make very much. Very easy to have that mind too. I mean, we certainly have that in this world today. But it's, I think, easy to have it right here. I'm not a CEO. Verse 79, the assertion is, arrogance is appropriate, or let's say the arrogance is natural, because a king is free to enjoy all objects. Well, this one was easy. and model is free to enjoy all objects. A well-paid consultant is free to enjoy all objects. I think all of us are free to enjoy all objects. I reworded it. I live in Seattle. I can get anything I want. I'm free to enjoy all objects. Really, in our society, we can get anything we want, anytime we want. And so, there can be a certain amount of pride there. So Aryadeva's answer is, that which you wrongly regard, others consider a source of suffering. Living by working for others, what can cause you pleasure? So, in other words, what you think is superlative happiness, O Queen of the Universe, is a source of suffering to somebody who has wisdom. So to get puffed up, I can get anything I want. Well, those who are wise, who see that all these produced phenomena are in the nature of unsatisfactoriness, nature of dukkha, they see that even your wanting it is a source of suffering. So there's no reason to be proud here. And besides that, how you got to be able to get all these things is because you have a job. You have all these duties that you're responsible for. You have to do this and this and this. In this case, it's kingly duties. How can this be a cause for happiness? It's the cause of many problems, creates craving for women, liquor, and so on. That's what Geshe Topti said. So it's Geltset makes a very tart remark in his commentary, which might be applied today if you're a lawyer or a judge. So if John Meinhofer is listening, this one's for you. Why feel glad about being appointed to punish thieves? The point being, your job is just to punish people. Why would you feel proud about being able to chase happiness because you have that job? It's crazy. So, don't be proud. Okay, verse 80. Pride is appropriate because a king is a protector of the people. Well, so is a cop, so is a firefighter, so is a soldier. So we could take any of those kinds of professions. Who are protectors? All kinds of protectors. Pride is okay because you're a protector. Well, that brings it a little more closer, I think. The verse reads, when a ruler seems to be the protector of his people, as well as protected, why be proud because of the one? Why not be free from pride because of the other? In other words, when you seem to be the protector, you also have to be protected. Like in order to be able to protect, for a cop, for example, in order to be able to protect and take care of the people on your beat, you have to have the other cops, you have to have laws, you have to have all kinds of support to protect you. Why be proud about being a cop? My dad was a cop. I am very familiar with the pride of a cop. Often done, sadly, with kind of a wish to be of benefit to people. But there is still that sense of power, that pride. But if we can recognize that we're also needing to be protected, then that's the antidote. Why be proud? That person should be humble because all the population protects you. It's an interesting turn. Okay, verse 81. The assertion is, arrogance is okay because the king has lots of merit as the protector. It's a meritorious act to protect other living beings, so why not be puffed up about it? Aryadeva says, those in each caste prefer their own work. Thus, a living is hard to find. If you become non-virtuous, good transmigrations will be scarce for you. So this needs a little background, and I'm not sure it's so relevant, but the idea being that in India, each person was in a certain caste, and so they had to live kind of work within that caste. And even today, in this degenerate age, people are not so virtuous. So it's hard for them to make a living honestly. So if you're the tax collector, you're the one demanding payment for all these people, because if you protect them, when they pay, you're also getting their bad karma from the negative actions they do in order to make that money. So what is there to be proud of about that? If you're the leader, goes back to the same thing. If you're the leader, you're actually the employee of the people. If you're the leader of anything, you're actually the employee of the people. If you're the leader of the band, this was some of Venerable's, you're the leader of the band, you're the leader of the monastery, you're the leader of anything. You're really an employee of the people. And she stressed this. I thought this was kind of personal. She said, you may think you have a lot of power, but you're at the mercy of the people you lead. She said, I want to institute this abbess for a day so people can see how it is. People think that you can do anything you want, but you actually can't. And then she also said, if you lead people to virtue and they practice, you also get their merit. So this is an important side point. They say, if you want your teachers to live long and healthy lives, practice what they teach you. And this is why. If they get the merit from you creating merit, then you are helping them to live long. So the better we practice, the longer we'll have our teacher. It's an aside. Verse 82. Arrogance is okay because the king is the protector of the people and is independent. Well, that's not true. It means like their independence is what they're going after here. Those who only act when others insist is called... those who only act in the way that others insist is called a fool. You're not called a king, you're called a fool. If you're in a position of power, you have to answer to the people you're leading. A leader is more dependent than others. Boy, if we had that as a model for leadership in our Congress, our corporations, things would run really differently. If that was really our model. I know that even in, organizational development schools, they teach this. But I think it's hard to practice. It's really hard to practice. I remember, this brought up a situation in my own life that I organized and led a lot of conferences in a certain period of my life. And, you can manage the conference program, you can tell people what you're going to do, you can MC and direct them, but if they rebel, you have to change the program. You cannot make 300 people do your brilliant idea if they don't want to do it. It's very humbling. You're standing there with a microphone trying to lead all these people. It's like, oh, I guess we're not going to do that. Same thing. But you can get kind of puffed up about being the person holding the microphone, for sure. And we do that, head of anything, head of the kitchen, head of the building, head of the volunteers, head of the whatever. Okay, verse 83. Arrogance is appropriate because the king or the firefighter or the night guard or the big sister is the protector. Big sister is kind of another one you can puff up about. Here's Aryadeva. Claiming protection depends on me, you take payment from the people. But if you perform ill deeds, who is equally merciless? So this is like, Venerable Children's commentary is that people in power only think they have the right to do what they want. So as the oldest sister, I was often in charge of my brothers and sisters. It was my job to make sure that things got done, the house got clean when Mom was away, that dinner got made, that many, many, many things. So I'm in charge. I can sneak a cookie. It's my right. right? I'm the leader. I'm in charge. They have to behave. But if I have a little, orange juice wasn't allowed except at breakfast. If I have a glass of orange juice after school, well, I'm the king. I'm the queen. They don't have to know, but if I caught them doing it, right? So many situations we can do that. I live here. I can take this out of the fridge. Whatever our justification. This is the justifications, and it comes a little bit from our puffed up pride. Verse 84. This is this whole section on punishing wrongdoers. And I'll go through it kind of quickly because this was one where it wasn't so, I couldn't make it relevant. The thing here, this 84, 85, and I think 86, the assertion is if wrongdoers aren't punished, that's not okay. It's proper to punish them. And Aryadeva says, if people who do ill deeds should not be treated with mercy, all ordinary childish people would also not to be protected. So his point is, in these next couple of verses, is that, a king out of pride, has the capacity, and maybe even the function, to really cause harm to people. Wrongdoers, for example. And Aryadeva is saying you need to be kind to everybody. When he says all ordinary childish people all wouldn't need to be protected if you're not kind to the criminals. Like everybody does ill deeds. Everybody. So to be harsh with ones that are criminals or that you get caught is not proper. And that's a real act of arrogance, kind of out of control. Puffed up, I can do what I can do, I need to do what's necessary to punish those people because that's my job. You can see how that kind of violence really can erupt in a situation of government or leading. A king must protect the populace as he protects himself. So the only thing I could think that was really relevant here is, we have this bodhisattva precept about not making ridiculous or harmful rules in the monastery. Right? So I think it's kind of like that. You can make rules that are not necessary or rules that you really make people stick to that aren't beneficial. And that can come from a place of pride. I'm in charge. Do what I say. That kind of mind. And then verse 85 is in the same vein. The assertion is this: a king who punishes wrongdoers to protect everybody is engaged in helping the good. So this is a rationalization. Again, it's like, well, you harm wrongdoers, you're helping society. So a king should do that. And then Aryadeva said, there is nothing that will not serve as a reason for happiness. Reasons such as scriptural statements will not destroy demerit. So basically he's saying you're just rationalizing and trying to make this okay. So we'll go on to the next one. Verse 86, assertion, since protecting people is cause for high rebirth and is therefore a spiritual practice, a king doesn't need another practice. Yeah, that protecting people is virtuous. And Aryadeva says, if giving a proper protection is a ruler's religious practice, why would the toil of artisans too not be religious practice? So if protecting the people is your religious or spiritual practice, then why not the people who make the protection armaments also doing a spiritual practice? Right? This doesn't make any sense. And so what he's basically saying is that violent action or wars or whatever is not a religious activity. It cannot be. There's no such thing as a just war, right? So I think we could do this kind of a rationalization in a different sort of way. Like, I am the runner of the Dharma Center. That's my spiritual practice. I don't need to do any other spiritual practice. That's not harming people, per se, although I suppose it could. But it is a rationalization. I know when I used to work in Reiki, I definitely had this idea that helping people to overcome their pain was a part of my spiritual practice. And with the right mind, that's not wrong. But with a prideful mind, or with a mind that says that's the only spiritual practice that I need to do, then that's misguided. That's not right. Burson said, how can you be happy about being a king if you punish people and cause them hardship and pain? How could that be a source of like your religious practice? Hello? The next verse, the assertion is, an intelligent king protects out of loving concern, so is irreproachable. Oh, my motivation is good. I care about my people. I think that sounds good, actually. Aryadeva says, this example shows the ruler on whom the people rely as reprehensible. The excellent see attachment to existence as mother of all those in the world. So Gyaltsab says, being a ruler on whom the people rely for protection is a source of arrogance. And all kinds of recklessness arises. Therefore, it's reprehensible. So is the ruler doing this, the protection, really doing this out of tender concern? Or is it out of protecting my land, my people, my stuff? It's the mine that's crept in there. So protecting really creates a lot of negative karma. So, and Gyaltsab says the wise ones, the exalted ones, again, see that attachment to existence is what causes so much suffering, right? So these are mine, I'm protecting them. This thing about tender concern is probably not an accurate motivation. So in that case, we can see from ourselves that we grasp after power, we grasp after money, we grasp after praise, we grasp after whatever our shtick is. And that's in our own way. We're serving this I. We're serving our puffed up I. Verse 88. Because of his compassion, a king's protection of his people is his religious practice. Oh, it's his compassion. I love this line. This is Aryadeva's answer. The sensible do not acquire kingship. Since fools have no compassion, these merciless rulers of men, although protectors, are irreligious. Since fools have no compassion. Well, okay, that's right. King or no king, those who value karma and its effects strive to purify and don't turn away from virtuous paths. They're not after power or wealth or status. The others, us, are fools. We have worldly power, we use it to help ourselves and help our friends. So the emphasis here is protecting, not religion. So it's the basis of pride and carelessness. The sensible do not acquire kingship. The sensible do not acquire power. The sensible do not acquire. Period. Okay. The assertion for verse 89. The treatises of sages say even if a king does violent actions because of his royal caste, it's not an ill deed. In other words, the social commentaries of the time say that if the king is doing what's necessary, it's his obligation. So it's up to the royal caste, for example, to raise armies and go out and conquer people and stuff like that. Aryadeva says, sages' activities are not all actions that the wise perform, for there are inferior, mediocre, and superior ones. So I think what I got from this is that just because a social commentator says something doesn't mean it's true. And Venerable Children, actually, she brought this in very clearly. She said, look at Nazi Germany. Look at Stalin's Russia. Look at Mao's China. The people who are executing the orders of those rulers were just doing their job. Right? Just doing their job. Following the social commentary of the time. Following the popular thought. And so, that puffed upness, it doesn't mean that there was nothing wise about any of those directions. So both the rulers in that case, with their arrogance, and then who knows how much the bureaucrats and the executioners of other aspects of those policies, how much pride in their power, thinking this is okay. This is what everybody's doing. How easily diluted, and then how much destructive karma, how much harm is created out of that kind of view. Verse 90 follows along that, the assertion, because past kings who took these commentaries to be valid looked after their people well, then social commentaries must be valid. Well, Aryadeva says, no, they're not. Virtuous rulers of the past protected the people like their children. Through the practices of this time of strife, it's now like a waste without wildlife. It's like, okay, maybe the rulers way a long time ago were really benign. Today they aren't. So that's just the way it is. I think of the Singaporean government. They are really, they try very hard, actually, that government, to benefit the people. That's really their goal. There's no freedom of dissent. People can't protest for anything, for any kind of change. The government is like this sort of benevolent parent trying to run everybody. It doesn't work. So even in a place where it seems that people, they have this benevolent motivation, how much individuals are run by their desire for power, their wish to be seen, recognized as leaders, whatever, who knows. There's another one about harming enemies. The treatises say it's not harmful for a king to harm enemies. He's supposed to do that. That's his job. Aryadeva says, if a king who seizes the occasion to harm is not doing wrong, then others too, such as thieves, have not done so in the first place. So in other words, if the king can do it, anybody can do it. And we kind of have that too in our society. If the CEO or the sales manager lies for the company, steals for the company a little bit, it's their right. It's kind of their job. It's kind of their job. Venerable says this shows how foolish we are in samsara. We don't have ethical principles. We don't know how things work. We function by helping our friends and harming our enemies. And she added, as Zopa Rinpoche points out, that's what animals do. They help their friends and harm their enemies. Surely we can develop a different motivation for doing things. Verse 92. By defeating the enemy in battle, we acquire wealth, honors, and please the king. That's the assertion. Same thing. By getting that bid, by securing that contract, by snagging that client, we acquire wealth, honors, and please the boss. We have this. If you die for the king, you'll get a good rebirth. That's the assertion. If you die for the company, you'll get big rewards. If you die for your department, die in quotes. If you strive for your school, you strive for your theater company. That kind of mind, But really, it's more, underneath that is our own aspiration for power and wealth. It's not about, it's not such a noble ambition. Aryadeva says, if giving all one has for liquor and so on is not an offering, why consider it an offering to give yourself in battle? Right? You get that? So, if giving all you have for liquor and gambling doesn't please the virtuous ones, is not a religious thing, is not a noble thing, why would giving your body in battle also be virtuous or noble? Or why would working long hours be virtuous and noble? I mean, I've had this a lot in my life. Work for the company. It's kind of a virtuous action. It's not. Verse 93, it is reasonable to like being a king because a king is the guardian of his people. This guardian thing is there. It's reasonable to like being a school principal because a principal is the guardian of the people. It's reasonable to like being a CEO because the CEO is the guardian of the employees. It's reasonable to like being an artistic director because the artistic director leads the people. So Aryadeva says, you, the king, guardian of the people, have no guardian yourself. Since your guardianship does not release you, who would be happy? This one I found quite poignant. So the leader gives good instructions, the people follow, but having power and a confused mind and living in a mass of corruption without a mentor, it's so easy to go off, to go wonky. I just thought of that mayor of Toronto. I mean, who knows? But the person, I mean, the thing that really came to mind for me was Whitney Houston. You know the story about Whitney Houston? Phenomenal talent. Phenomenal talent. Girl who started singing in church, as many young women did. As she got wealthier and wealthier and more famous, this whole entourage around her, I mean, she got more and more trying to control her environment so nobody would challenge her. So, and they couldn't, they were interested in her money. She also had friends that were close to her. There were a few people that she trusted, but the richer she got, the more famous she got, the more she couldn't trust the people around her because she recognized that they were after her for her money. So she's doing drugs, or somebody tries to challenge her on her drug problem, she fires them. She had become a king without a guardian. There was nobody anymore that she could listen to. There was nobody anymore that she could have that could give her wise counsel. So she's very protective of her entire entourage, it seems. But what? A tragic death. She ends up, overdosing or whatever in the bathtub in some hotel in LA. It's so sad. Lance Armstrong also came to mind. This incredible athlete who, gets busted for being the doping king of all times. The leader, he was so famous, but who at some point, he was such a leader. And then at some point, who was his mentor? Who could he go to? Who could say to him, you're being a little arrogant. We're so fortunate that we have someone who does. So easy to see how we could kind of take this role. I'm the guardian, I'm the leader. But because we're so confused, we're not necessarily leading people in the right way. Very sad. Therefore, why be happy about having that job? That's the bottom line. There's nothing to be happy about for that. Okay, verse 94. Since a king whose punishments are mild does not become famous, while one who punishes harshly is famous even after death, it's okay to give harsh punishment. This is so silly, it's not even worth commenting on.
Okay, so Aryadeva says, though a king is famous after his death, it will bring no benefit. Do you, being worthless, and those who cook dogs not have notoriety? This thing about cooking dogs, there's got to be some cultural something, and I couldn't find it. But okay, you're famous after death, so what? What good does that do you? Fame brings no benefit. You can't purify your negative actions with your fame. So whether you do something as gross as cook dogs, or whether you really harm beings or venerable children, again brought in Harry Truman, who dropped the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, very famous and lauded in your time actually for doing such a thing. What kind of karma do you have from that? What kind of destruction was wrought from that? The fame is not helping Harry Truman wherever he is today. But, again, our own legacy kind of rears up in our head. And sometimes, what am I leaving behind? What kind of reputation will I have when I'm gone? What have I done that people will remember me for? To be very careful, I think. Then there's a whole section, oh my gosh, how did I do that? There's a whole section here that's actually very useful. I'm going to go over a little bit, you guys. About caste. There's a whole section on how being born in the right caste gives you all this right to be arrogant. So we have class, and we really have class. We also have issues of race. We have issues of education. There's all kinds of ways that we can set ourselves up as superior to other people around us. So I think the ones about caste are useful. First assertion, a prince of royal caste is fit to rule while others are not. Therefore, pride is okay. Aryadeva says, when all power and wealth are produced by merit, it cannot be said that one will not be a basis for power and wealth. So, it's not that being royal makes you fit. You get that job by your merit. You get position by your merit. And anybody can create merit. In fact, if you're in a position of power, you're probably not creating merit if you're not using it wisely. So there's nothing special about being born in a particular class. And so this was happening right as the new Prince of England was being born. Verible's bottom line was, all babies cry the same. They all cry the same. Assertion, only the royal learn how to rule. Since they alone can rule, it's fit for them to be arrogant. So, it kind of depends on the size of your town, right? You may not have been born super wealthy, but if you were in a little teeny tiny town and you were the only profession, your family was the only professional family in that town, yeah, you could get some status. You're in a coal miner town and you're the only one whose dad went to school and became the lawyer. You get some status. And then you think, well, I'm the only one fit to be the mayor. I'm the only one fit to be the student body president. We can have this. Today, as class is determined by who your parents are, it doesn't mean you have any special soul or special nature. I love this analogy. It's like we're a bunch of identical pots with different labels by function. We're all the same. All clay pots. But that one's a honey pot because it has honey in it. That's a jam pot because it has jam in it. That's a ketchup pot because it has ketchup in it. It's just labels. All these beings with different roles. So pride is not proper. I'm going to go to the last verse. The last verse refutes that it's proper for a king or anybody to be conceited. Pride caused by power and wealth, once one has looked at others with equal or superior power, does not remain in the hearts of the wise. So this is like the antidote to this whole thing. An antidote. If you have a lot of pride or a lot of arrogance about the story was about beauty. There's the example of a Brahmin's wife who was very beautiful, and she was always wanting her husband to buy her more jewelry and buy her more this and buy her more clothes, and he just couldn't. He said, "You'd be better off in the king's retinue." So she went to live with the king, but once she got there, the king had all of these wives, and they were many more beautiful than she was. And so she realized that in comparison, oh, well, maybe I'm not so beautiful, and her pride was diminished. So it's like we can get puffed up about something, but we're puffed up because we're comparing ourselves with people who are equal. So an antidote to that is to really look and say, so you get puffed up about your own good qualities, for example. Well, I don't know, go to the teachings in India and look at all that row of lamas sitting in front of the Dalai Lama. Well, I don't know very much at all. It changes our view. So Venerable really got into this. She said, so we do this. I'm the best cook in the community. I'm the best chanter in the community. I'm the best building manager in the community. Whatever. But then if you go somewhere else, you see that there are others better. So it's our own little small pond, big fish, small pond mind that also gets us in trouble. There's a few things, there's so much I wanted to say at the end. Venerable talked a lot about arrogance and self-confidence. Very important to remember the difference between the two. That arrogance is self-inflation that has no ground to stand on. The thing that we're inflating doesn't exist. On the other hand, she said, and His Holiness says all the time, you have to have self-confidence in order to train as a bodhisattva. Otherwise, if you try to help people, if you have no strength of mind, it's the first time somebody comes back at you with not appreciating your kindness, you melt because your feelings are hurt, and you can't help them. So self-confidence is based on recognizing our good qualities, recognizing our Buddha potential, relying on dependent arising, understanding that if we cultivate these, then then we really can change and grow. Whereas pride is just puffed up. This is hot air. Pride's just hot air. Geshe Sono Rinchen said, self-confidence is the feeling of certainty based on sound reasons that one has the ability to do something. It is an aspect of wisdom. And it gives us the courage to undertake difficult and challenging tasks. Arrogance is developed by comparing ourselves with others externally. Interesting. That's the whole thing it's based on. We look around, I'm better than her, I'm better than her, I'm not as good as her. I'm better than he is, oh, I'm not as good as he is. And, it kind of depends on how many better thans or worse thans you get in a day. Depends on where your mind is. Oh, yeah, I'm great. Oh, I'm really garbage. It's just dumb. But we do it. We just do it. I'm going to end with His Holiness. When he talks about this, the 8 verses, whenever I am with others, I will practice seeing myself as the lowest of all, and from the very depth of my heart, I will respectfully hold others as supreme. He says, no matter who we are with, we often think things like, I'm stronger than him, I'm more beautiful than she is. I'm more intelligent than they are. So we generate this over and over. Instead, we should always remain humble. Even when we are helping others and engaged in charity work, we should not regard ourselves in a very haughty way. This is an interesting antidote. When we compare ourselves with animals, for instance, we might think, I have a human body, or I'm an ordained person. From one point of view, we can say that we have human bodies and are practicing the Buddha's teachings and are much better than insects. From another point of view, we can say that insects are innocent and free from guile, whereas we often lie and misrepresent ourselves in devious ways in order to deceive others. From that point of view, we have to say we're much worse than insects, which just go about their business without pretending to be anything. This is one method for training in humility. So right here, as we have all of our little stink bugs walking around the carpet, walking around, we can look at that stink bug and think, they are not trying to pretend to be anything. They're not puffed up. They're just going about their business, living their lives, dying on the carpet, not asking anything of anybody. They are better than me. And therefore overcome our pride. So, I don't know if that was helpful at all, but I do have to say it was, even though I had a fair amount of resistance to working on this chapter, not because I don't have pride, partly because I do have so much pride, but also partly because it was so hard to get inside. I learned a lot from it. It was really very, very helpful. So it's easy to see how easy it is to puff over nothing, which is the point. May we all stop puffing and get on with it. Okay.